and let me back it up. If you're moving for a mistrial, you need to move for a mistrial.
I move for a mistrial.
Based on
the presence of people in the courtroom and the public gallery.
Your Honor, I have to stop for one moment. We have a witness now on the stand.
Can I have, if you go ahead and sit down, thank you.
And I do actually very much appreciate the court helping me maintain a record on this. We formally moved for a mistrial under the 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution, parallel provisions of the Constitution of the State of Georgia. We contend that the atmosphere of the trial, both inside and outside the courtroom, at this point has deprived Mr. Bryan of his right to a fair trial. I understand that co-counsel vehemently disagree on some aspects of that motion, and if they don't want to join, that's their business. But I represent Mr. Bryan, and my concern, Your Honor, notwithstanding what in my observation would be extraordinary efforts on the part of the court to avoid anything that would interfere with the right of these defendants to a fair trial. At the same time, in extraordinary cases like this, additional steps have to be taken. We have not secured the front of this courthouse. The Transformative Justice Coalition still flies their banner virtually every day outside in what should be protected grounds. Your Honor, we have had numerous instances several instances during jury selection of nonverbal communications between the victim's family and jurors, or from juror to the victim's family. We've had several emotional outbursts during the trial of this case, notwithstanding the substantial efforts of the court to ensure that they don't take place. And we have had civil rights icons sitting in here in what the civil rights community contends is a quote-unquote test case for civil rights in the United States, eyeballing these jurors, including one today with his mask down, which the court doesn't want to make part of the record. Under Supreme... I rephrased that. Didn't make part of the record.
Thank you.
Yeah, I rephrased.
You made it part of the record.
Well, until the court acknowledges it, it's not part of the record.
Keep going, Mr. Gough.
Your Honor, the case law out there in mob cases and other cases demonstrates all the ways that presence in a gallery can influence jurors in a case. And I certainly don't mean to suggest that Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson or any other pastor belong to a mob, but at the same time, we are talking about organized behavior by whoever outside the courthouse leading up to this case. But we have all these community leaders fearful that the city's going to burn down. This isn't a mob case. If you testify against a gangster, they might burn your house down. They might burn your business down. They're not going to burn your whole city down. And that is the concern that I believe jurors have expressed during the voir dire process in that a county commissioner, a mayor, school board member, a bunch of pastors in this community, both black and white, have been talking about. So in that context, we believe the totality of the circumstances, which is what this court looks at under Shepard v. Maxwell, under the totality of circumstances, this trial has been sufficiently infected, notwithstanding the best efforts of the court, to the point where Mr. Bryan's ability to receive a fair trial has become an open question. We think that line's been crossed. The court may see it differently, but we've made that for purposes of the record.
On behalf of Travis McMichael, we're constrained to join. I did notice jurors, a few, noticed the outburst. I don't think it gets any more difficult at moments like this for the family members to have to sit through the evidence. This moment feels unique in that the one piece of evidence that the state put up was not, so inflammatory, but there were several jurors that did look over. Their faces changed, the emotion, the sympathy that they felt, and to see then Mr. Reverend Jackson, whose autographed picture hung in my mother's law office for 2 decades, who is the ultimate figure of fairness and justice and equality. To see that, I don't think it gets any higher in terms of the impression that that makes. And for those reasons, I think that makes this very unique. And that's why we're constrained to join, Your Honor. Thank you.
Likewise, on behalf of Greg McMichael, we are constrained to join this motion, but for some slightly different reasons I'd like to highlight. It was apparent from the beginning of voir dire that it was going to be difficult, even long before voir dire, that it was going to be difficult to get a jury who had informed opinions, and we worked very hard to do that. And we would have loved to have had a jury that represents the demographic composition of Glenn County, which would have been 3 or 4 African Americans on the jury. We were not able to do that. I think some comments by the court in denying the state's reverse Batson motion, I take exception to them, and with all due respect, but it's continued the difficulty we've had from the beginning in trying to determine, is this the right venue for this case? We hoped it would be. We wanted it to be. But in light of what's going on now and what has been the history of this case up to now, we are constrained to join the motion for mistrial, but for these slightly different reasons.
Your Honor, let me be clear. I don't know what this talk about change of venue is. There's nothing wrong with this venue. We're not concerned about the venue, but we are concerned about the details as to how this trial has progressed, notwithstanding the extraordinary efforts that this court has made. And I certainly don't want the court to think for a moment that Mr. Bryan and I don't very much appreciate the incredible amount of work the court has put into this and the thoughtfulness. But if the court's not going to grant a mistrial, I would humbly urge the court to consider adopting other precautions to ensure that the court doesn't wind up where the court has to grant that motion.
Anything from the state?